This is the Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to this next episode of Interview with a Lockpicker. Today's guest is Ionawest. Say hi.
Hello.
So,
Uh,
where are you from?
yeah, I'm from Australia, and I'm based in two cities in Australia, Sydney and Brisbane.
Okay. So, how and when did you get into lock sport?
I started picking somewhere in 2019, so three and a half years ago, about 3.5 years ago now. Late 2019, I would say, and I got into it via well, around that time I got a lot of YouTube channels recommended to me, and amongst them were LockNoob and LPL, although I don't watch either of them that much anymore. Um, and I thought it was interesting, so I picked up a kit and got started.
Okay. So, what kind of kit did you pick up?
Um, at the time, I got the Southwood PXS 14 kit, which
Okay.
is, super basic kit, couple of hooks.
Yep.
Not really many hooks, mostly rakes and tensioners. And then I transitioned pretty quickly off that to Peterson, and now I use, a whole heap of different brands.
Okay. Like who?
My main kit is currently Lawlock Tools, Moki Picks, Jimmy, and Multi Pick.
Ah, gotta love your jimmies.
Yeah.
So, I would imagine when you got into lockpicking, so right around the lockdowns for with the pandemic. I would imagine the community kind of exploded a bit as people were looking for things to do, and Locksport kind of had a really nice uptick around that time. So, can you talk about your introduction to the community and then how you got yourself involved in different aspects of it?
Yeah, sure. So I started off on Reddit. So I was already a Reddit user before that. So I found the lockpicking subreddit and I didn't really post much, but I did look there and I found quite a lot of information to just go off and improve. And a couple months in February 2020, I joined Discord along with a whole heap of new members with as you said, COVID. Um, And on the Discord, it's really welcoming. There's a lot more experienced people, and you find that when you have something that you want to ask, it's so much easier to just, ping someone and ask, the exact question to them rather than having to look it up. And my personal lockpicking skills shot up from there.
Okay.
And yeah, now I've been on the Discord for a couple years now. Nowadays, I'm a mod for the Discord LPU. And well, by virtue of being a Discord mod, I'm also a Reddit mod, although I don't do too much there.
Okay. So, what's it like being a mod on Reddit? We'll get to Discord.
Um,
We'll get to Discord in a moment.
sure. On Reddit, there's a couple posts a day, right? On the lockpicking subreddit, there used to be more, but now that COVID's dying down, we've kind of hidden average, 20, 30 posts a day or so. I would say about 20.
Okay.
Um, So all we do is we go through those posts, we see if anything breaks our rules. So we're pretty strict on rules, obviously, as lockpicking sort of almost toes the line of the law. And we go through mod mail, which where we see if anyone has any queries, and most importantly, in mod mail, there's also belt requests, which we handle. They send in a video, we watch it, see if there's any issues, and we can approve and deny belts as
I'll
as the situation demands.
Yeah, I'll speak from personal experience. I can't speak for anybody else, but the mods on Reddit, they have been great ever since I've got involved in Reddit back in 2020. Um, just very quick to jump on and deal with trolls and toxic type, people. Um, I've had them deal with several of my posts over the last few years, and it's been definitely very much appreciated. So I hats off to you guys that are doing the moderation on there.
Yeah, especially mods like, Randa. I think you're doing an interview with him either last week or next week. Not sure.
Yep.
Um, Absolutely great mod, does probably the most work, as long with like Sept and Norland.
Okay. So, what about Discord? So you're a mod on LPU.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
So what is that like? Because I would imagine that's a lot busier.
Yeah, so I mod both on Discord. I mod LPU and the Australian picking subreddit Discord, although the Australian one has almost no issues to moderate. On the lockpicking union Discord or the lockpickers united, um, so we sort of each mod does something different, not officially, but in practice, each mod does something quite different. And what I tend to do the least of, or I used to do a lot of it, but not anymore, is actually go through the chat and find stuff that has issues, which is generally this. There's very little issues. It's a very good community, but sometimes
Yeah.
there are issues, and sometimes you have to, just delete them, delete whatever messages cross the line, give warnings out, just ask people to, be polite, follow the rules. But generally, since it's a nice community, we don't have much of that.
Yeah.
My personal role as a mod is more towards the lock classification side. So, well, these days anyway, all I do is I look at what the current black belt pickers think about the classification system. I collate a list of locks every couple weeks um, to perhaps be changed this month, and I present that list to a group of more experienced moderators at picking to decide to have the final say on what changes and what doesn't based on what the black belts have said about locks this month.
Okay, so would you say there are any members in the Discord community that kind of stick out to you more than others?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go on the positive side here.
Yep.
Besides, obviously, some of the fellow moderators, like as I said earlier, Ryan Sept, Retep, are excellent members. But in terms of just our regular members, we have some really, really positive ones who try their best to help out all the time and are just incredibly knowledgeable. People like Greenish, 206, Do Not Duplicate, etc.
Yep.
And we also have some who aren't so active but are just absurdly knowledgeable, like Bora, Martin Hewitt. Um, yeah, people like that who have this wealth of knowledge on specific locks but aren't as active. But when you ask them and they know, well, you're very thankful for it.
Okay. So between Reddit and Discord, there's a lot, well, dealing with the whole belt ranking thing. So you're a black belt 6 Dan, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Can you talk about your journey a little bit getting to black belt?
Sure. So from the very beginning, the first lock I bought was just this crappy acrylic lock,
Yeah.
and with it I bought an Abus 5540,
Oh my
which is
goodness. Yep.
probably one of the most common beginner locks.
Yep.
And I think this might be um, a good point of comparison, but that Abus 5540 took me 3 months of like continuous daily effort to pick. Yeah, so
I've got one in front of
um,
me right now.
they're awful. Like they're very fun, but they're so unreasonably hard for their level.
Yep.
So I finished off that, and then so that's orange belt, and I picked a couple other locks in the white to orange range at the time. And I spent a long time after that in the green blue range. I think I must have picked like 20, 30 locks in that range.
Okay.
Um, in Australia, we have the Lockwood 334B45 is what it's called, and
Yep.
it's our iconic blue belt lock. Um, so I picked one of those, and I ended up picking I think like 8 more of those. And then after that, I went to purple belt. I picked a smart key and a ASA 600, I think it was. So those were quite fun. I think purple belt even now is probably the most fun range of locks where things are challenging enough to not be mindless, but not so hard that you spend weeks on them.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, After purple, I skipped all the way to black. I picked a Bilock and a ASA Twin V10 right after purple. Those took ages, but I think it was worth it. Improved my skills a lot. And from there, I've been well. Obviously, after black belt, you have the Dan system, right?
Yes.
So I never really did that many different locks, I would say. I picked or at least not on camera, which is necessary for the dance system. But I documented quite a few of the extra quests, which I'm a big advocate of. So pic making, impressioning, um, safe cracking, and a whole bunch of other things. And then I picked a couple more locks to get to. I think it was fourth dan, and then I picked another lock and jumped to sixth. And I haven't really progressed that much from there. I've got a couple locks that I'm working on, but it's very slow work.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about a couple of the quests you mentioned. So you mentioned pick making. So what all is involved in the quest that involves pick making?
So we have guidelines that we've set up. So as of I think it was last year, we figured that the previous way the quests were set up made them not so rewarding for the really advanced makers compared to the beginners, and also a bit unbalanced compared to the points that picking locks gave. So we've since reworked it to be like a 5 tier system based on your skill, and this is voted from your portfolio by the current black belts. And in pick making in particular, we have that, when you start making picks, so, we ask that you make picks of obviously steel, and you put a handle with some creativity on it,
Okay.
because otherwise, you might as well buy one from the shop. It'll
Okay.
probably be better to buy one from the shop objectively, by the way.
So what constitutes creativity then?
Just some sort of design that has thought in it. Um, you can't just put if you put like two paddle pop sticks on it, it functionally does work, but
Sure.
it feels like you've gone for the bare minimum effort. While we generally ask that you come up with some sort of design, whether it's for some specific function, like for example, if you have a specific grip, then you might shape it for that grip,
Yeah.
or some sort of decorative purpose.
Okay.
So, for example, specific woods, patterning. Very famously, we have Red Yoke. I don't know how to pronounce his name, sorry, but he makes his ebony and silver picks, which are very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Um, so like creativity could also include doing some kind of wiring pattern into the handle, that sort of thing as well, I would imagine.
Absolutely,
Yep. Okay,
yeah.
so what about the impressioning one?
Impressioning was a really hard one to justify, I guess. In the past, how it worked was you got sent a lock by another community member, and they like a reputable community member, and they made sure that it wasn't guttable and that they didn't send you the key. So, and then you just had to impression it and show a photo of the key, show a photo of the key opening the lock, and when the original member confirmed it was the same lock, that's all you needed.
Okay.
Nowadays, like pick making, we've split it into 5 tiers. So all the quests have been split into 5 tiers. With impressioning, we've basically qualified it by the number of things you've impressioned and the variety of things you've impressioned. So, for example, like a really basic, just a pin tumbler lock, might get you tier 2, for example, which is our baseline. So, tier 2 is the minimum you need to use the quest for a black belt application.
Okay.
Um, but then if you impression things with security key pins, something weird like a disk detainer or lever lock, you can get higher tiers. And our a requirement for tier 5 is simply just a portfolio of a large variety and number of locks that you've done.
Okay.
So it's just become a bit more of a challenge to get the higher tiers, and it remains as easy to get into the quest.
Okay. And then one last one, if you don't mind. Is the are the community involvement type quests something more recent, or has it just been more further developed?
I believe there was some community involvement quests from the very beginning of the quest system.
Okay.
So, what stands out, for example, is the beginning of a tool chapter. So, if you started a tool chapter, tool
Yeah.
being, the open organization, um, then you received equivalent points for a quest. Nowadays, there is the community side of the quests. It's not as rigid as the others. So, obviously, it's very hard to quantify exactly how important of a contribution to the community any quest is. So all that is we put it up for a vote from the black belts, and whatever is decided as the public opinion of how important that contribution is what it gets nowadays.
Okay. Cool.
So we've just expanded on it.
All right. Good to hear. All right. So, um, you kind of talked through a little bit about the lock classification and reclassification that you're involved in with a little bit on Discord. Are you Can you explain a little bit about that outside of Discord? What you do with regard to classification and reclassification?
Sure. So obviously the classification system is run off Discord because that's the main community for LPU.
Yep.
Um, so outside of Discord, well, right off the bat, we'll start with the actual how it works. So we have the belt ranking list, which anyone can access, and on top of that list is a another Google sheet we call the classification sheet, started by Peace Weapon, um, and that sheet is where every black belt and other sufficiently advanced picker can put a vote on each lock, and on their vote they can put a color and also their like a short note talking about what their opinion is.
Okay.
Um, every time I go through and I notice that a lock has so a lock needs a majority to be on the higher belt generally. Generally we say if 2/3 of the votes are on the higher belt and 1/3 is on the lower, that is just crossing the line to be in the higher belt.
Okay.
Um, so if I notice that something is on the edge or crossing the line either towards a lower belt or a higher belt, then I'll put it into something we call evaluation. And this also goes for like re-ranking suggestions, like changing high pin count. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Um, Next question for you. Can you talk about your YouTube channel? I would imagine it started out like a lot of
Just
people's
and people
channels
vote.
do. Huh?
Yeah, my YouTube channel, I just started it to prove that I was picking locks,
Yeah.
and nothing's really changed. Nowadays, I put the anything I pick that I feel is either relevant to the community, so a challenge lock, or something that I feel is particularly impressive for my own standards, and I'll film those and put them on.
Okay. So
Uh, yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I haven't posted much recently, but I think I mean, there's only one video that I would consider particularly notable, which is obviously the Chroma Protector lock. But um, yeah, so I nowadays it's locks that I feel have challenged me for a long period of time and have forced me to develop new skills that I put on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what is your opinion on challenge locks then? I mean, it sounds like you do take them on. So
I just think they're fun. I think that they're a great thing because lockpicking in itself is something you do by yourself, right?
yes.
You sit in a dark room and you pick a lock. But challenge locks are a way to interact.
I work better with some lights on, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, challenge locks are just a way to interact with your fellow lockpickers beyond just sending stock locks back and forth, and it's a way to put a bit of your own taste in a challenge.
Okay.
So, picking someone else's locks and making your own, although I don't do much of that, is, a good way to put a bit more of yourself out into the community.
Yeah, I found that I enjoy making them probably more than I enjoy picking them, but I do pick one on occasion and try to catch it on video. But I do like trying to make them. So trying to put some more out there. We'll see. But so okay. So last question before we wrap up. What do you do for a living?
I'm a student at the moment. I'm in my country, Australia. It's called an honors student, so it's between bachelor's and masters. And I study physics and maths, and I also teach it to younger students.
Okay. So can you? I mean, does for your knowledge of physics, how does that really work with you on lockpicking, for example?
I do think having a basic understanding of physics is really important for lockpicking. So I don't mean like a particularly obviously it's accessible, everyone can learn it, but just an understanding of how when you put tension on a lock or when you pick a tumbler on a lock, how the forces, friction,
Yeah,
whatever involved affect it, and that lets you predict how a lock will act before you start picking. And particularly with stuff no one else has really worked on, or stuff that barely anyone has worked on, it's really helpful to get an idea for a plan of attack before you even start.
okay. So has that helped you get into a number of locks, I would assume?
Yeah, actually, surprisingly, a couple of weird, a couple of particularly recently some weird lever locks. Um, it's helped me just think about. So as long as I know how they function, right, and I have obviously you can take them apart and have a look, and you can think about when you apply tension and how you apply tension, what in what ways the force from your tension distributes into the lock itself, and then from there you can predict what will bind, what won't bind, and then what it will feel like when it's set and what it feels like when it's binding, etc. And from there you can pick the lock, or at least come up with a plan.
So open a physics book and give it a read.
Yep.
All right. So before we wrap up, did you want to say anything to our audience?
Nothing in particular, but if you're not on the Discord already, I think you should give it a visit. It's way more welcoming than it seems at a glance.
Okay. All right. I want to thank you for the interview. We had a pretty good pre-interview, and I enjoyed that a lot. So,
Yeah, thank you very much.
yep. So with that, we're gonna close up this interview. If you are a subscriber, thank you. If you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications and all, and hit like on the video. And thank you for listening.